In Mark 134, we saw Jesus finishing an exhausting day. It was a Sabbath. He cured a lot of people. He did a lot of people. He started the day in the synagogue in Capernaum. He drove a demon out of that poor man. Then he got out of the synagogue. He went to Peter's house and he cured his mother in law. At the end of the day, he saw a multitude of people gathering outside the door because they all wanted to get healed by him. And he did. He started healing them one by one until late at night. He probably went to sleep in the house of Peter very late that night. And today we're going to go over verse 135, and we're going to see that Jesus, very early in the morning, before even the sun is up, he sleeps out and he goes to pray. And this may sound like a casual remark by the evangelist Mark. Jesus getting out early in the morning from the house, going to a solitary place and pray. It's pretty common throughout the Gospels. We see this happening all the time. Jesus separating from his disciples, finding a secluded place and pray. But this particular verse in Mark is special because it foreshadows something much, much bigger. Okay, Mark 135, let's read. Kai proi ennukalian anastas, exelsen, kai apelsen, e seremontopon, kakei proseucheto. Now, this sentence, this verse, is very easy from a grammatical point of view, but also very peculiar. It starts with the usual conjunction, kai, and we've seen it many times. But then it has, look, three adverbs, proi, enuka, lien. Okay, we're going to see what all these adverbs mean, but it's pretty peculiar that Mark starts a sentence with three adverbs, one after the other. Then you have this anastas, which is a participle. It's a participle. It's a verb in the participle form, related to Jesus, of course, who is the one that performed the action, and the action is given by these two verbs, exelsen and apelsen. These are verb number one and verb number two, connected by the conjunction kai and. Then you have this eis eremon, which is the place where Jesus goes to pray. Eis eremon topon, sorry, this is the whole prepositional phrase. And then you have another verb, which is this proseucheto, which is verb number three, which is connected by this conjunction, which is not exactly like kai, is kai plus another adverb that put together create this kake. We're going to break it down to understand the meaning of it. So from a grammatical point of view, very easy. Let's try to translate. All right. Kai and then let's jump into these three adverbs. The first one is pro-e. Now, pro-e comes from the preposition pro, which means before. All right. So the adverb pro-e means early. Okay. Early or very early. Okay. What comes before everything. Very early. Then you have this enuka. Now, technically, this enuka comes from an adverb, enukos, and this ending a indicates a neuter plural, all right? But it's used in the form of an adverb, okay, in the accusative case. But again, it's a form of temporal indication. Now, what does enuka means? Well, enuka is made up of two pieces. One is the preposition en, and the other one is nux. Okay, en is the preposition we've seen it many times that indicates a status in a place, all right? So it means in, at. And nux means night, night, okay? So literally, enuka means at night, all right? So we see the first verb, adverb means very early, enuka, at night. And what about lien? Lien is the third adverb that means incredibly, okay? Incredibly, exceedingly. So if we put these three things together, what Mark is trying to say is that it was night, it was very early, and incredibly dark still. So this was way before dawn, way before sunbreak. Okay, we can say very early when it was still dark, completely dark. Okay, that's what Mark is trying to say, right? And the participle, the verb anastas, it's a participle in the aorist tense, masculine singular because it refers to Jesus, in the nominative case because Jesus is the subject of the sentence, and it comes from the verb anistemi. Okay, anistemi has this preposition ana, which means going up. Okay, ana indicates a movement upward. Okay, and so anistemi means raising up, getting up. Okay, so this first part of the verse can be translated like this: and having woken up or getting up very early when it was still very dark, exelsen kai apelsen. Now, look at these two verbs. So these two verbs sound very similar. And in fact, they are because they come from the same base verb, which is ergoman. We've seen it many times. This is the aorist form. It's an irregular verb. And in the aorist third person singular, you have this form elsen, elsen. So the only difference here is the preposition in front. So here you have the preposition ek or x. It becomes x in front of a vowel. And here you have the preposition apo. All right, apo. Now, these two prepositions mean more or less the same thing, but not exactly the same thing. So the preposition ek indicates a motion out of, okay? Indicates that you are inside a place and you're getting out of that place. The preposition apo technically means that you are close to a place and you're moving away, okay? Away from, okay? So they more or less indicate the same idea of moving out of, away from something, but it's not exactly the same. And that's exactly why Mark uses both of them, because he wants to vividly, graphically, in almost slow motion, show you what Jesus did. It was very early at night. It was dark all around. And Jesus exalts him, so got out of the house, Peter's house, where he stayed and slept, and moved away. All right. So he slept out of the house and moved away, went away, eis eremon topon. Now, this is a prepositional phrase introduced by this preposition eis, which is the opposite of ek. Okay, eis is the preposition that indicates entering into a place. Okay, entering into a place. And where does he enter? Into a eremon topon. Well, topon, so you see that eis wants the accusative form. You have it here in this on ending, accusative masculine singular. The noun is topon and eremon is the adjective. Okay, so he went to a topos, which is a place. Okay, which is a place. Eremon, we've seen this adjective many times with John the Baptist that appeared in the Eremon topon, like in the desert. It's a secluded place. Okay, so it can mean the desert, but it also can mean a secluded place, a place very far away where nobody's living. All right. In this particular case, probably it doesn't mean that Jesus went to the desert. It just means that probably went to a very secluded place where nobody could see him. All right. So he slipped out and went away into a secluded place, kake. Now we seen this. I mentioned this. This is a form, a very particular form where two Greek words get smashed together and create one single word. So this actually, let me clean up here, comes from two words. One is sky, which is a conjunction that we know means and the other is an adverb, which is eke, which means there, right? So kake really means and there, and there. And when you put these two things together, okay, The iota drops in the first, and the epsilon drops in the second, and they're put together, and you get this kake. All right, this kake. All right, and it simply means and there, prosecuto. Now, this is a very important verb. It appears many times throughout the gospel because it's the act of praying. All right, so let's spend some time here. The verb is, let's write it here, is proseukomai. Okay, proseukomai. Now, proseukomai, you see there is this preposition in front, pros, which indicates a movement towards. Okay, pros, if you want, is the opposite of apo. Okay, so here you have all the motion preposition. You have ek, which is the opposite of eis, ek or x out of, eis into, and then you have apo, which is away from, which is the opposite of pros, which means towards to. All right, and then this euchomai, which is an offer, all right, or stretching. So pros euchomai literally means stretching out toward, all right, and that's the act of praying, because when we pray, we stretch our hands, but also ourself, our soul, toward God. All right. So that's the general idea of the verb proseuchomai. So proseuchomai means praying, worshiping God. All right. It's that act of praying and offering to God. So here is how we can translate this verse. And very early at night, when it was exceedingly dark, after raising up, he slipped out and he went away into a secluded place, and there he prayed. So, what's so special about this verse, you may ask? Well, there's only one other place where Mark starts the verse with a series of adverbs, and exactly these adverbs. Look at this. We find it in Mark chapter 16, so at the very end of the Gospel of Mark. And look at this. The start of the verse is very similar. Kai lian pro I. All right? You have the kai, you have the lian, and you have the pro I. All right? So you don't have the enuka. Enuka is the only one that's missing. But it's very interesting that he starts the verse exactly the same, basically, and very early, exceedingly early in the morning. Now, Mark 16:2 is not just one random verse, okay? It's a very important episode. Is when the women wake up Sunday morning, very early in the morning, and go to the tomb, all right? Temia, the first day, ton Sabbaton of the week, okay? The first day after the Sabbath, okay? They went to the tomb, okay? Before or when the sun was about to rise. All right. So, okay, what's so special about this? Well, it's just some adverbs. Well, there's much more than that. So, this emphatic pointing to the fact that it was exceedingly early in the morning appears only this other time in Mark 16 when the women wake up very early in the morning to go to the tomb. Okay, number one. Number two, well, when did the women woke up early in the morning? Well, Jesus was killed on the Friday before the Sabbath. Then during the whole Sabbath, he was buried, and the women couldn't do anything because it was a Sabbath, nobody could perform any work. And so the women waited until the daybreak and the end of the Sabbath, right? And the beginning of the Sunday, the first day after the Sabbath, to go to the tomb and anoint the body of Jesus. All right. Well, in Mark, we know that when Jesus wakes up and slips out of the house of Peter, it was the day after the Sabbath. We know that because the day before, he spent the whole day performing miracles during the Sabbath. Okay, connection number two. connection number three. Look at this verb, anastas. Okay, we translate that, and very early in the morning, when it was exceedingly dark, he got up. Well, this verb, anastas, is just a little bit more, actually, much more than just getting up. This is the resurrection verb, is rise. When Jesus is said, Jesus is risen, Jesus anesti is the verb anastas. Anistemi is the resurrection verb. This is connection number three. It cannot be a coincidence. Mark here in this verse is foreshadowing the resurrection. This is how Jesus resurrected. The very first day after the Sabbath, when it was still dark, very early in the morning, Jesus raised from the dead and slipped out of the tomb.